They say every revolution begins with a spark. But for Manchester City, it began with silence, the kind that comes before a storm. A billionaire-backed club still craving identity, still searching for immortality. A growing giant without a soul yet defined, fueled by ambition, but haunted by the sneers of Europe's football elite. Money Club, they called them. Bought success, they whispered. City had trophies, but not reverence. Players, but not legacy. A modern castle without a king. And then one name echoed across the football world like a prophecy. Pep Guardiola. On a cool summer day in 2016, as cameras flashed and journalists prepared their questions, the man who reshaped Barcelona and conquered Germany stepped into the Etihad with a quiet smile and a revolutionary mission burning behind his eyes. But Pep didn't walk into Manchester seeking comfort or applause. He walked in seeking perfection. When he first spoke to the club's directors, he didn't ask about money. He didn't ask about fame. He asked about control, about philosophy, about the future of football, not just the next season, but the next decade. He wanted a sandbox to craft ideas the world had never seen. He wanted a club built not on stars, but on structure. He wanted players who listened, learned, bled for a system. He wanted Manchester City to stop chasing greatness and start defining it. But not everyone believed. England is a battlefield, not a ballet. The Premier League devours ideologies. It laughs at philosophies. It breaks systems. The pundits smirked. "It won't work here," they said. "This isn't Spain. This isn't Germany." Pep listened, nodded politely, then quietly sharpened his footballing scalpel like a surgeon preparing for the most difficult operation of his career. The first months were chaos. Heavy touches, confused full-backs, center-backs drowning under pressing traps, Claudio Bravo flinching under long-range shots, opponents running straight through spaces Pep demanded be controlled like sacred chess squares. Commentators circled like vultures, headlines ready to pounce. Overrated. Arrogant. Finished without Messi. Yet behind the training ground gates of the CFA, a different story unfolded. Pep watched, whispered, corrected, demanded. Training sessions were symphonies of repetition, passing lanes rehearsed until footwork became instinct, positioning corrected until it lived in muscle memory. Every drill was a puzzle. Every pass had purpose. Every mistake was not punishment, but education. He wasn't teaching them how to play football. He was teaching them how to think football. His voice cut through Manchester air like a conductor's baton. Again, faster, think, never stop. He demanded bravery in possession, courage in chaos, calm under pressure. City would not kick and chase. They would suffocate, hypnotize, and dismantle. They would turn football into geometry, space, angles, tempo, 11 minds, one heartbeat. But revolutions cost blood, even metaphorical ones. Icons had to fall, fan favorites had to leave. Joe Hart, hero of the terraces, voice of the dressing room, was gone. Yaya Touré was phased out. Vincent Kompany, legend and warrior, had to reinvent himself or be left behind. It hurt. It angered many. But Pep wasn't building nostalgia. He was building eternity. The board backed him without hesitation. The club transformed around his vision. Scouting changed. Youth development sharpened. Analysts, data specialists, tactical innovators. An army built behind him. City didn't just sign players. They signed profiles. Intelligence over ego, technique over chaos, humility over personality. Players who could be molded into tools, not celebrities. And then came the first real strike of evolution. Ederson Moraes. A goalkeeper not selected for his saves, but for his fearlessness. His feet, not just his hands, were weapons. His passes cut through lines like arrows. Where Bravo trembled, Ederson smiled in the face of pressure. He didn't just play the ball, he dictated the game. And suddenly everything shifted. Kyle Walker arrived. pace like wildfire, mentality like steel. Bernardo Silva, a hummingbird with a warrior's heart. Ilkay Gundogan, a metronome disguised as a man. Haaland Stones, a defender made of silk and courage, learning to erase doubt one touch at a time. The blueprint sharpened, the orchestra tuned, and the mistakes of Season 1 were not scars. They were foundation stone. Because Pep never feared losing, he feared not evolving. Then came the storm. City didn't just win, they devoured. The football world watched in stunned silence as Pep asked Manchester City unleashed perfection, disguised as passing drills. Possession wasn't just control. It was pressure, domination, hypnosis. Opponents chased shadows. Midfielders suffocated. Goalkeepers watched helplessly as 18 pass sequences ended with tap-ins that looked insultingly easy, because Pep made football feel inevitable. The scoreboards ran wild. 5-0, 6-0, 7-2, and the legendary 100-point season arrived. A monument carved not in luck, but in iron discipline and dizzying beauty. The Centurions weren't a team. They were a message, a warning, a statement that shook the foundations of English football. But Pep didn't blink. Greatness wasn't the goal. Sustained evolution was. He didn't celebrate long. He studied, he refined, he demanded more, always more. Because for Guardiola, excellence isn't a destination, it is a forever climbing mountain. And so City evolved again. False nines, inverted fullbacks, midfielders becoming defenders, defenders becoming playmakers. Kevin De Bruyne became a quarterback of chaos, bending defenses like gravity. Raheem Sterling turned into a lethal ghost on the far post. Gabriel Jesus pressed like a lion defending his territory. Football purists gasped. Traditionalists fumed. But Pep wasn't here to obey tradition. He was here to rewrite it. Yet the biggest battles were not on the turf. They were in the dressing room. He challenged egos. He broke comfort zones. He demanded humility even in victory. He pushed his stars to the brink of doubt, only to rebuild them stronger. Players didn't just run for him. They believed for him. He gave them structure, and they returned loyalty. Still, one mountain loomed. The mountain that defined kings. The prize that crowned legacies. Europe, the Champions League. And every failure carved deeper hunger. Lyon, Tottenham, Chelsea. Nights of heartbreak, nights of doubt. Nights when critics claimed Pep had overthought, over-tinkered, over-philosophized. But Pep did not break. He did not retreat. He sharpened. He restudied. He evolved again. Because a genius is not proven in success, but in response to failure. The story of Manchester City's treble did not begin in glory. It began in criticism, in confusion, in doubt. And that is where greatness is forged, in the fire before the crown. This was not just a team being built. This was an empire being carved. Great empires are not remembered for victories alone. They are remembered for the moments when the world tried to stop them and failed. Manchester City's empire under Pep Guardiola did not march through England untouched by resistance. It grew sharper because of it. There was Klopp's Liverpool, fierce, fearless, fueled by chaos and belief, the perfect rival. The storm that pushed Pep's calm order to its limit. Their clashes weren't matches. They were wars of philosophy. Heavy metal football versus chessboard domination. Emotion versus execution. Pressing fire against positional ice. And in this rivalry, City did not bend, they sharpened themselves into steel. A 100-point season was followed by 98 points, the type of consistency that breaks ordinary managers and destroys ordinary squads. But Pep wasn't building ordinary, he was building inevitable. Every game was a test of the soul, every weekend a trial of mentality. Lose once, and Liverpool breathed down their neck. Draw once, and the title race tilted. There was no space for human error, and yet City kept marching, calm, merciless, mechanized. A footballing machine that did not panic, did not rush, did not lose faith in its method. But behind the polished passing sequences and historic point totals was something raw, human, and often unseen: sacrifice. Players changed themselves to fit Pep's ideas. They weren't just athletes anymore. They were instruments of evolution. Kyle Walker learned to become not just a right back, but a midfielder, a sweeper, a commander of space. John Stones battled doubt and injury and public criticism, then returned reborn, graceful, bold, rewriting what a defender could be. Kevin De Bruyne, gifted as he already was, sharpened his vision until his passes felt less like kicks and more like prophecies. Others waited in shadows for their chance. Riyad Mahrez, patient yet deadly, polished himself into a clutch finisher. Phil Foden, the boy from Stockport, groomed into the club's beating heart, proof Pep didn't only build squads, he built legacies. And then came Rodri, the anchor, the brainstem, the conductor in disguise. At first, critics questioned. Too slow, they said, too cautious. But evolution is never obvious at birth. Pep saw not the player Rodri was, but the player he would become: a midfield colossus, a dictator of tempo, a wall and compass in one. Over time, Rodri became oxygen for the system, the invisible force that made the chaos quiet. City's philosophy was now complete: dominate space, suffocate time, control emotion. And yet, glory never comes without cost. There were nights when Europe mocked them, nights when Pep's meticulous adjustments seemed overcomplicated, when football romantics accused him of thinking too much. But the truth was simpler. Geniuses don't fear mistakes. They fear stagnation. Still, the pain was real. The Champions League became an obsession. Tottenham, heartbreak. Lyon, disbelief. Chelsea, agony under Porto's floodlights. 3 years, 3 wounds. 3 nights when City felt the weight of history pushing back. But even in failure, Pep never abandoned belief. His voice stayed calm. His demand remained the same. Trust the process. Trust the football. We are building something that lasts. And so the club doubled down. The board didn't panic. The players didn't break. They strengthened. They evolved. The squad became deeper than tactics. It became culture. A culture where substitutes could start anywhere else. A culture where humility wasn't optional. It was oxygen. A culture where training felt like war and match day felt like precision surgery. No celebrity egos, no shortcuts, no surrender to noise outside. But the final transformation, the spark that ignited destiny, came with a force of nature, a Viking in sky blue, a striker carved from fury and physics. Erling Haaland arrived like a hammer from mythology, and critics asked the question again: would Pep adapt or resist? Because Haaland was power in purest form, pace like a predator, finishing like a myth, hunger forged in snow and ambition, a profile unlike anything Pep had ever managed. And the world wondered, could precision coexist with raw violence? The answer came fast. Pep did not resist evolution. He had invited in it. City's system stretched, widened, reshaped itself like an organism adapting to a stronger world. De Bruyne and Haaland became a weapon so devastating that defenses prayed not to be exposed. The runs, the timing, the passes that felt like lightning bolts splitting defenses in two. The goals came like rain from a monsoon, relentless, unmerciful, biblical. Suddenly, City had the machine and the monster, the elegance and the execution, the system and the assassin. But it wasn't just Haaland. It was the shift Pep made behind him, the move that changed football again. John Stones stepping into midfield, becoming half defender, half playmaker, the hybrid role that rewired modern tactics. A tactical evolution that would be copied worldwide, but never replicated. City didn't play football anymore. They bent it to their will. And in the dressing room, the belief reached a fever pitch. There was no fear, no hesitation, only hunger, not to win, but to dominate. Not to silence critics, but to make them irrelevant. Not to touch history, but to reshape it. The treble was no longer a dream. It was a destination. The Premier League fell first, again, not with drama, but with inevitability. Arsenal chased like lions, but City hunted like a machine programmed for triumph. In the FA Cup, they swatted aside rivals with cold purpose. The football world already felt the shift. City weren't chasing trophies, they were collecting inevitabilities. And as the Champions League anthem echoed one more time, there was no fear left. Only destiny breathing in sky blue. The machine was ready. The world was watching. The final mountain stood ahead, and Man City didn't plan to climb it. They planned to erase it. History does not hand out greatness. It demands tribute. It demands suffering. It demands evolution. And for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, the night of destiny arrived not on English soil, not under familiar skies, but in Istanbul, the city where empires are born and legends are judged. The Champions League final, the trophy that had slipped away, mocked them, teased them, tortured them. The competition that critics weaponized against Pep's genius, the one wound in a body of perfection. Inter Milan stood across the field, stubborn, disciplined, fearless. A chess opponent refusing to be intimidated by the most powerful machine modern football had ever seen. The world expected fireworks. Instead, they got tension, tight like a rope pulled between fate and failure. The whistle blew, and every touch felt heavy, every pass a test. City didn't glide that night. They battled. Inter pressed with fury, defended like warriors with nothing to lose. City, for once, looked human. Anxiety crept into passes. Haaland's sprints met brick walls. De Bruyne, the architect of miracle assists, felt pain in his muscle again. Cruel déjà vu from a final before. He left the field, eyes glazed, heart burning, destiny delayed. But this city wasn't the one from Porto. This was a city forged in scars. They did not panic. They did not crumble. They endured. And in the heart of the storm stood Ilkay Gundogan, captain, thinker, quiet titan, whispering calm into chaos. Then a moment. A window the size of a heartbeat. Bernardo Silva danced. The ball flickered loose, and Rodri, the invisible general, the metronome-turned gladiator, appeared like time slowed just for him. One touch to shape, one shot to define history. A finish not with power but precision. A moment not of chaos but of control. The ball kissed the net. Time froze, and 1,000 emotions detonated at once. Pep didn't celebrate like a man relieved. He celebrated like a man vindicated. A fist raised not to the sky, but to narrative itself. Years of ridicule. Years of, he can't do it without Messi. Years of tactical gospel questioned by amateurs with microphones. In one strike, silenced. In one goal, transformed into applause. The minutes that followed were agony. A save from Ederson, a miracle of pure reflex and destiny, kept dreams alive. Inter came close, hearts stopped, voices held in throats. But champions aren't measured only in dominance. Sometimes champions survive. Sometimes destiny demands resilience more than beauty. And then the whistle, silence, before eruption. The Champions League was theirs. The treble was complete. The prophecy fulfilled. Manchester City were no longer chasing history. They had become it. But let us go beyond the celebration. beyond confetti, beyond medals. Because the true immortality of Pep Guardiola is not the trophies. It is the transformation. He turned football into art without losing its brutality. He made defenders creators, goalkeepers quarterbacks, wingers midfielders. He bent formations like clay, reinvented roles like an engineer rewriting physics. He didn't follow trends, he created them. And the world copied his homework. From Barcelona to Bayern to Manchester, the thread is not trophies. It is ideology. A devotion to perfection. A faith in intelligence over emotion. A philosophy where the ball is not a tool, it is a truth. Players who came under him left changed, not just technically, mentally. They saw football differently, understood time differently, viewed space as a living thing. They graduated from Pep's school not as athletes, but as thinkers. And what of the club? Manchester City did not simply win. They evolved. They built culture. They built a system where the structure matters more than any star, where talent is amplified, not worshipped, where ambition is quiet, relentless, and inevitable. But here is the secret that defines Pep more than anything else. He never stops. He does not rest on trophies. He does not sink into nostalgia. He wakes up the morning after glory and demands evolution again, because dynasties are not maintained by memory, but by hunger. So what is Guardiola's legacy? It is not only the treble. It is not even the dominance of English football. It is the redefinition of how a team can think, how a club can build, how a sport can be played. He made the Premier League evolve to survive him. He forced rivals to raise standards or drown. He elevated coaching from passion to science. He proved that beauty and winning can be the same thing, if the courage to pursue perfection does not break. And someday when Pep leaves, Manchester City will not collapse, because his genius is not just in what he built, it is in what he left behind. A philosophy, a standard, a culture of excellence carved into the walls, the grass, the DNA of the club. Long after the chants fade, long after the lights dim, his blueprint remains. A reminder that football can be poetry and punishment at once. That dominance can be graceful. That evolution never stops. Guardiola didn't just transform Manchester City into treble winners. He turned them into a football idea so powerful that the game itself had to evolve to keep up. And when history looks back, it won't simply say, Manchester City won. It will say, Manchester City became inevitable. And the architect of inevitability was Pep Guardiola, a man who didn't just coach a team, he redefined a sport.